You're listening to Midlife State of Mind podcast, hosted by Erin, a midlife gal who dishes on all the challenges and opportunities that come with this middle section of your life. Each episode, you'll find yourself going between laughter and tears as she covers all the topics you need to know about midlife.
Welcome back to Midlife State of Mind. I'm your host, Erin Beadle. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode today. It's good to be back recording after a break last week. I was celebrating the Memorial Day holiday here in the U.S., so I hope everyone is doing great. Today's episode, I'm diving into the concept of showing up as your true authentic self. This topic of being your authentic self was recently a topic of conversation in a group of women that I get together with about once a month. And I was sharing how I feel that as I get into my mid-50s, that I'm becoming much more comfortable with showing up as my true self or not wearing the masks that I've worn over the years. And the byproduct of showing up as authentically as I can is I was trying to convey the idea that when I show up as my authentic self, when I am my true self and I'm not putting on a mask, even though that's really difficult, and I'm going to talk about some of the reasons why we wear masks, but it allows me to quickly differentiate between the people that are going to be part of my circle and the ones that aren't. Because the people that can't deal with my true nature, or who I'm too abrasive for, or they don't like what I have to say, or they don't share the same values as me, we're going to quickly cut through the chase of and get down to the nitty gritty of this is me with all of my glorious parts and all of my warts and less glorious parts. And so I was explaining how, because these girls are a little bit younger, that it's like I feel as I've gotten older, I have less time to kind of meander through deciding if, is this person someone that I can trust? Can I be myself around this person? And I'm just trying to be more and more of myself always to just eliminate that false connection, if you will. So thinking about this idea of being your true authentic self is one of the things that we do is that we wear quote unquote masks. And the masks serve as a distraction to keep others from seeing where our flaws and our shame lie. They also serve to accentuate the parts of ourselves that we want to highlight and the parts that we feel give us worth. So think of it as, instead of, if you don't want to say mask, think of it as a spotlight. So I'll shine the spotlight on the good parts of me, the kind person, the animal lover, the loyal friend, but I keep in the dark all the other parts of myself that are less attractive, my abrasiveness, my tendency to cuss, and the flaws that I have. So they hide the parts of me that I don't want to see because it's in the dark. And we wear a lot of different masks in our life. We have our professional mask in our professional life. We have our personal masks that we wear in our personal relationship, friendships, partnerships, and otherwise. Maybe even masks that we wear with our children or with our parents. And we usually choose the mask that we're going to wear based on the situation's context, so cultural norms that we have in our world. And then also oftentimes that mask can be based on our emotional state at that moment. And neuroscience research has shown that different social situations can activate distinct regions of our brain, which suggest that there is a neurological basis for this ability for us to shift between our different personas or different masks that we wear. So it's not just a social skill, but it is a testament to our brain's adaptability to engage in the world in multiple and nuanced ways. So our brain is highly nuanced in its ability to, based on the social situation, to adapt to whatever it needs to be, right? I've talked in several different episodes about the amygdala, which is our reptilian part of our brain that is always on the prowl for danger. It's always the thing that is looking to keep us safe. And so other areas of our brains are what allow us to adapt to our situations that are going on at the current moment. So it's probably a survival mechanism of some sort. So once we recognize that we wear these different masks for different situations, you may be wondering, is there a way that you can minimize it so that you will show up as your most authentic self? I think especially in the period of midlife or as we age and we decide that life is short, I want to be my true self as much as possible. And it definitely takes a lot of retraining of our habitual tendencies to put on the mask of when I'm here, this is how I act. And then when I'm here, this is how I act, right? And it's interesting. I think that during the pandemic, some of that was able to be unlearned because we were wearing real masks all the time when we went out in public. So people couldn't see our smiles. So we didn't have that forced smile oftentimes, or we felt like we could almost be, because we had a literal mask on, that we could then be our true self because people couldn't see us fully, if that makes sense. But in a post-pandemic world, one of the things that you can do as a practice is to practice mindfulness. And I talk about this in episode after episode after episode. It's the yoga teacher in me. It's the practice that I actually work on as much as possible every day, which is staying in the present moment. And then also when you're in the present moment, recognizing when you do feel yourself putting on a mask, when you feel yourself not being your true self, when you're not sharing things, or when you're biting your tongue because you don't want other people to judge you. And then another helpful practice is to release the weight of others' opinions and reminding yourself to focus on what makes you happy. This is a really hard one. It's been a really hard one for me because I am a reforming people pleaser and I always want to be liked. I don't necessarily think that wanting to be liked is a bad thing, but it is a bad thing when it makes you diminish your own self or not be true to your thoughts and your values. And like I said, you only have this one precious life, so you really want to focus on doing the things that allow you to be as true to yourself as possible. And then another way is practicing self-love. And I feel that it gets a lot of buzz around self-love, but it's a really difficult practice, I think, for a lot of people because we are our worst enemy. So one of the things that we need to do is minimize our negative self-talk. Anytime you find yourself picking yourself apart or being really hard on yourself, it's always just good to notice it first and then redirect it. I think of Pavlov's dog that every time he heard a bell, he salivated because he had made that connection between food and the bell. And so making a connection for yourself of noticing that, like, when I start to have this negative self-talk, what do I need to do? So I need to redirect myself. I need to have some kind of mantra or saying that I tell myself so that each time that you link the two and eventually you can override the negative self-talk with the positive self-talk. It doesn't mean that you're untrue in your words to yourself. It's not like you're saying, I'm the most amazing person in the world, but you're like, I will give myself grace, or I am whole just as I am. Whatever language you want to choose for yourself, make it positive and in the present tense. And then last thing that I'll share is that I think it's important to be able to express your true self. You may not be able to do this in all situations, but having the ability to share your thoughts and feelings and beliefs openly with people that you trust. It's one of the things that when I get together with the group of ladies, that we are able to all share very real feelings that we have, very real thoughts. Some of them, it's usually very vulnerable information that we're sharing. And so either finding a group of trusted friends or friend or a therapist, and that way you're allowing yourself to be seen fully. So you're shining the spotlight on your entire self, not just the good parts, not just the parts that will bring praise or will bring accolades to you, like, oh, you're such a great person, or look at you doing that wonderful thing. It's like, no, I'm sometimes an awful person. I mean, I just have to remind myself that it's not who I am all, it's just a part of my humanity. So thank you so much for listening today. I would love to hear your thoughts on showing up as your true self, how you mask, when you mask, if you have noticed. You can share your thoughts with me on my Instagram or Facebook, Midlife State of Mind Podcast, or you can head to my website, midlifestateofmindpodcast.com, and you can send me a message there. If you are a new listener, I would love to have you hit the follow button so that you can stay in the loop whenever new episodes drop each week. If any episode has particularly resonated with you and you enjoy the content that I share, I would be grateful for a rating and a written review on whatever podcast platform you are listening to me on. And lastly, if you're interested in some additional ways that you can support the podcast, you can take a look at the show notes and you'll see links to some of my favorite products. These are ones that I use and I love and I share with all of my best girlfriends. If you do choose to purchase any of the products with a link, then the podcast does earn a small commission that just helps to offset the cost of producing it. My podcast is a place where we can inspire each other to make positive changes and embrace all that midlife has to offer. I'll be back next week with another episode. See you then. Bye.
This has been an E Squared production.